Emily Carter stepped into the large office building with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. It was her first day at one of the most competitive companies in the city, a place where only the best were expected to succeed. The glass doors of the lobby reflected her determined expression, but deep down, she could feel her heart pounding. She had worked hard for this moment, spending years studying, training, and preparing herself for opportunities like this. Yet she knew first impressions mattered, and she had to be ready to face a room full of people who had no reason to believe in her. From the very beginning, the reactions of her new colleagues were immediate and noticeable. A few whispered to each other as she walked by, their smirks and sideways glances making her feel like she had stepped onto a stage with everyone waiting for her to stumble. Some of the senior employees gave her polite nods, but their eyes held a subtle skepticism, a silent question of whether she really belonged there. Emily noticed it all but didn't let it shake her. She had learned long ago that people often judge based on appearances, and she intended to let her work do the talking. Her desk was small but neatly arranged, a corner near the windows with a view of the bustling city outside. She placed her laptop on the table and took a deep breath, thinking about the long journey that had brought her here. It had not been easy. She had faced countless rejections before finally getting the call for this position. But she reminded herself that every challenge had prepared her for this moment. She was not just another new hire. She carried a unique set of skills and experiences that she had developed quietly over the years. Skills that no one in this office could even guess yet. As she settled in, the first team meeting was called. Emily entered a room buzzing with energy, laughter, and conversation. The team was large, with people who had known each other for years. They exchanged jokes, shared inside stories, and for a moment, Emily felt like an outsider trying to break into a club that didn't yet know she existed. When the manager began introducing the new team members, Emily felt the weight of everyone's eyes on her. A few colleagues tried to make casual conversation, but most kept their distance, unconsciously testing her. She smiled politely, answered questions confidently, and carefully observed the dynamics around her. She knew she had to understand not only the work but the personalities of the people she would be working with. Almost immediately, Emily sensed the subtle mockery. A colleague named Jason, sitting across the table, made a comment under his breath about her lack of experience, assuming that she would struggle with even the simplest tasks. Another coworker, Sarah, whispered to a friend that she didn't look like she could handle the workload of the office. The words weren't loud, but Emily heard them. Instead of reacting, she remained calm, choosing to listen rather than respond. She understood that this kind of doubt and ridicule was common when someone new joined a high-performing team. People often try to belittle newcomers because they feel threatened or simply because it's easier to judge than to trust. Emily's first few hours were filled with small tasks, setting up accounts, reading documents, and familiarizing herself with company protocols. Each assignment seemed simple, yet she approached them with precision and focus. She noticed minor errors in the way some processes were being handled and quietly made mental notes. She didn't point out mistakes immediately. She wanted to understand the bigger picture first. Her colleagues, on the other hand, continued to underestimate her. They laughed at small things she said, jokingly dismissing her suggestions as naive or inexperienced. Yet Emily didn't take offense. Instead, she saw it as an opportunity. She knew that sometimes being underestimated could be an advantage. People would never see her true abilities coming. By lunchtime, Emily had already observed patterns in how the team operated. She noticed who were the leaders, who were the troublemakers, and who genuinely cared about quality work. She quietly formed a plan in her mind, deciding how she could contribute in ways that would make a noticeable impact without drawing unnecessary attention. Even though the whispers and laughter were present, she felt a quiet confidence growing inside her. She knew that real skill and talent would eventually speak louder than words, and she was ready to let that happen. The first day ended with a sense of relief and accomplishment. Emily had survived the initial test of navigating her new environment. She had felt the skepticism, endured the whispers, and managed to stay composed. As she packed her bag and left the office, she looked back at her desk and smiled. This was just the beginning, she thought. Everyone might see her as a beginner now, But she knew that in time, her true abilities would shock them all. And deep down, she couldn't wait for that moment. Emily walked out of the building into the evening air, feeling the excitement of possibility. She knew the road ahead would not be easy. She would face challenges, doubts, and perhaps more ridicule. But she also knew that every step she took now was bringing her closer to showing everyone who she really was. And for the first time in a long time, she felt completely ready for the journey. The second day at the office began with a sense of nervous anticipation for Emily. She had survived her first day, learned a little about her colleagues, and begun to understand the subtle dynamics of the team. But she quickly realized that surviving was different from being accepted. As she walked into the office, she could already feel the eyes of some coworkers on her. Curious, skeptical, and sometimes mocking. Whispers followed her footsteps, and although no one openly said anything, the air was thick with judgment. Her tasks that day were slightly more challenging than the previous day. She was asked to assist with a project that had been delayed because her team thought it required more experienced hands. Jason, the colleague who had mocked her on the first day, smirked as he handed her the files, making a comment about whether she could handle it. Emily felt a twinge of irritation but kept her expression calm. She had learned long ago that letting frustration show only gave others power over her. Instead, she nodded politely and got to work, determined to prove herself not with words, but with results. As she studied the project documents, Emily quickly realized that many of the errors had accumulated because of carelessness and miscommunication. The team had grown so used to blaming external factors for mistakes that no one bothered to notice simple solutions that could prevent repeated problems. Emily, with her keen eye for detail, began mentally organizing the workflow, thinking of ways to make the process smoother and faster. She didn't say anything yet. She wanted to observe more and understand not only the work but also how her colleagues reacted to challenges. While Emily worked quietly, she could hear laughter and chatter from nearby desks. Some of her coworkers were joking about her, exaggerating small errors she had made while setting up her accounts the day before. It stung a little, but Emily reminded herself that this was not personal. It was the way people reacted to anyone new who might pose a challenge to their routine. She decided to focus all her energy on understanding the work and doing it better than anyone else expected. Around mid-morning, Emily was asked to present a small part of the project to a few team members. She felt a mix of excitement and pressure. These people had already doubted her abilities, and now she had a chance to show what she could do. As she explained her approach, she noticed subtle expressions of surprise. A few raised eyebrows, slight nods, and even a whispered "not bad" from Sarah, who had been the most skeptical of her on the first day. Emily continued confidently, clearly and calmly outlining how the errors could be fixed and how the workflow could be improved. She didn't speak arrogantly. She spoke with quiet authority, letting the logic and clarity of her ideas do the talking. After the meeting, a few colleagues began to approach her, asking questions about her suggestions. Some were genuinely curious, while others seemed almost reluctant to admit that they had underestimated her. Emily answered each question patiently, showing that she knew her stuff, but never bragging. She understood that patience and humility were just as important as skill. By the end of the morning, a small ripple of respect was beginning to form, although the majority of her colleagues still viewed her as an inexperienced newcomer. Lunchtime came and Emily found herself sitting alone at first, observing the group dynamics. She noticed patterns: who listened to whom, who laughed at whose jokes, and who seemed to have real influence. While some were openly friendly, others continued to whisper and make subtle jokes at her expense. Emily didn't let it bother her. Instead, she analyzed everything carefully, understanding that knowledge about people was just as valuable as knowledge about work. She realized that in order to succeed, she needed not only to be competent but also to understand how to navigate relationships and perceptions. After lunch, Emily faced her first real challenge of the day. The manager had asked for a quick report on a specific part of the project, something most of her colleagues thought would take hours to complete. Emily knew she could finish it faster, but she had to be careful. She couldn't just show her speed. She had to show accuracy and insight. Working efficiently, she completed the report with extra attention to detail, including suggestions for improvement that no one else had noticed. When she handed it in, the manager looked impressed, and even a few skeptical team members paused, realizing that Emily's abilities were far beyond what they had assumed. By mid-afternoon, Emily began to notice a subtle shift in how some people treated her. While the whispers and laughter didn't disappear completely, there were glimpses of curiosity and respect. A colleague who had been openly dismissive the day before asked for her opinion on a small task, and another stopped by to say thank you for pointing out a helpful solution. Emily acknowledged these moments with quiet gratitude, understanding that trust and recognition often came slowly, especially in a group that had initially doubted her. By the end of the day, Emily felt a mixture of exhaustion and quiet triumph. She had faced ridicule, stayed composed, and begun to prove her value. She realized that being underestimated wasn't a weakness, it was an opportunity. People who laughed at her skills didn't see the full extent of her experience, and that gave her an advantage. The challenges she faced today had shown her both the areas where she needed to adapt and the areas where her knowledge and skill would eventually shine. As Emily packed her things to leave, she felt a quiet satisfaction. The journey ahead was still long, but she knew she was on the right path. Each small success, each observation, and each challenge faced with patience and determination was building the foundation for something bigger. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new doubts, and perhaps even more ridicule, but Emily was ready. She had learned that real strength often comes from remaining calm, observing carefully, and letting your actions, not your words, prove who you really are. By the third day at the office, Emily Carter was beginning to feel a quiet confidence building inside her. She had survived the first 2 days of skepticism and mockery, and now she started to notice the smallest hints that some of her colleagues were beginning to see her differently. Even though many still whispered behind her back and joked about her rookie status, Emily had already learned that the opinions of others mattered far less than her own focus and preparation. The morning started with another team meeting, this time to discuss a new project that had been handed to the group. The project was important and complex, and everyone in the room knew it would require careful coordination and expertise. As usual, a few of the team members made subtle jokes at Emily's expense, implying that she might not be ready for such responsibility. Emily smiled politely but didn't respond. She had realized that arguments or explanations in this environment only drew attention to your weaknesses. Instead, she chose to listen, observe, and plan. While others debated back and forth about small details, Emily quietly took notes and analyzed the situation. She noticed patterns in how decisions were made, which colleagues often pushed their own ideas regardless of logic, and which ones genuinely sought the best solution. She could see opportunities where the project could move faster if someone approached it with clarity and precision. Emily decided to quietly take initiative in her own way, without drawing unnecessary attention. Later that morning, the first small tasks of the project were assigned. Many of her colleagues picked the easier, less demanding parts for themselves, joking that Emily can take the tricky ones. Jason smirked and handed her a complex task, assuming she would struggle and fail. Emily accepted it calmly, knowing that this was exactly the kind of situation she could turn to her advantage. She didn't rush or panic. Instead, she broke down the work step by step, carefully planning how to complete it efficiently. As she worked, a few curious colleagues started glancing over, noticing how methodical and precise she was. Emily didn't seek attention, but her focus and efficiency naturally drew notice. She completed the task ahead of schedule, double-checking every detail to ensure nothing was missed. When she submitted her work, even Jason, who had doubted her, paused for a moment, clearly surprised by the quality and speed of her results. By lunchtime, Emily realized that her quiet competence was beginning to make ripples. A few team members who had previously laughed at her were now showing subtle signs of respect. Sarah, who had been one of the most dismissive, approached her to ask for advice on a small part of the project. Emily answered patiently, explaining her reasoning clearly and simply. She didn't boast or highlight her own skills. Instead, she let her calm, competent approach speak for itself. Sarah listened intently, and Emily noticed a flicker of admiration in her eyes. After lunch, the team encountered their first real challenge. A problem arose in the project that no one had anticipated, and the group began arguing about the best way to solve it. Tempers flared, and tension filled the room. Emily remained quiet at first, observing how each person reacted under pressure. She realized that many of the arguments were based on ego rather than logic, and she quietly formulated a solution that would address the problem effectively. When the discussion reached a critical point, Emily spoke up. Her voice was calm but confident. She explained her approach clearly, showing how it could solve the issue while keeping the project on schedule. At first, a few colleagues tried to dismiss her idea, but she remained patient, answering questions and addressing doubts without any defensiveness. Slowly, one by one, the team began to see the sense in her solution. By the end of the discussion, what had seemed like an impossible problem was solved, and several colleagues exchanged surprised glances. Emily had quietly earned their attention and, for the first time, a measure of respect. Throughout the rest of the day, Emily continued to excel in her small assignments, always attentive to detail and thoughtful in her approach. She noticed the subtle shift in her colleagues' behavior. While some still doubted her, others were starting to approach her with questions or ask for input. The laughter and whispers hadn't disappeared completely, but Emily understood that change would take time. She didn't rush it. Instead, she focused on letting her actions speak louder than words. By the end of the day, Emily felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had begun to demonstrate her skills, not in a flashy or boastful way, but steadily and reliably. The small victories of today, though invisible to some, were building the foundation for something much larger. She had learned that respect wasn't given. It was earned through consistent effort, patience, and a calm, unshakable confidence. As she packed her things to leave, Emily reflected on the journey so far. She had faced mockery, skepticism, and doubt, yet she had remained composed and focused. Her strategy of observation, patience, and quiet competence was starting to work. She realized that being underestimated wasn't a weakness. It was a secret advantage. People would never expect her to rise so quickly or perform so well, and that element of surprise would become her greatest asset. Walking out of the building into the cool evening air, Emily felt a growing sense of anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and some colleagues would likely continue to test her. But she felt ready. She had discovered that skill combined with patience and observation was far more powerful than argument or confrontation. With each small success, she was slowly proving her true value. And she knew that one day, when the right moment came, everyone who had laughed at her skills would be shocked to realize just who Emily Carter really was. The fourth day at the office arrived with a sense of tension in the air, though Emily Carter felt calm and focused. She had begun to find her rhythm, quietly gaining respect from some of her colleagues while others continued to doubt her abilities. Today, however, would test her in a way that no previous day had. The team was assigned a critical project with a tight deadline, one that everyone knew could make or break their reputation. It was the kind of challenge where mistakes were highly visible and success could earn lasting recognition. As the manager outlined the project, Emily noticed the usual mix of excitement and anxiety among her team members. Some immediately began discussing strategies, while others tried to deflect responsibility, joking or blaming potential problems on others. Emily listened carefully, taking mental notes about how the group functioned under pressure. She recognized patterns in behavior, noting who tended to panic, who was overly confident, and who genuinely contributed useful ideas. She knew that understanding her team was as important as understanding the work itself. Once the tasks were divided, Emily found herself handling one of the most complex parts of the project. Jason, who had been dismissive of her abilities since day one, smirked and muttered something under his breath about her likely failure. Emily didn't respond. She had learned that reacting emotionally only gave others power over her. Instead, she focused entirely on the task, carefully planning each step and ensuring she understood every detail before moving forward. As she worked, Emily realized that the project had hidden complications that others had overlooked. She calmly identified the problems, mentally mapping out solutions that would not only fix the issues but also improve the overall workflow. She didn't announce her findings immediately. She wanted to ensure she had a full understanding of the situation before presenting her ideas. This quiet preparation was something her colleagues underestimated. Most of them assumed that because she was new, she lacked experience in handling complex problems. By mid-morning, the first signs of tension appeared. One of the senior team members had made a mistake that threatened to slow down the entire project. The group began to argue, raising voices and blaming each other. Emily stayed silent, watching carefully as tempers flared. She realized that this was an opportunity. While others reacted emotionally, she could approach the problem logically and calmly. Her mind worked quickly, considering every angle and predicting potential consequences. Finally, Emily spoke up. Her voice was calm, confident, and deliberate. She explained her solution step by step, showing how it could resolve the current issue and prevent further complications. Initially, a few team members were skeptical, including Jason, who crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. But Emily remained patient, answering every question clearly, providing reasoning and examples without arrogance. Slowly, the team began to see the logic in her approach. What had seemed like a major problem was now manageable, thanks to her insight. Her solution not only fixed the immediate issue but also streamlined the workflow, making the project more efficient than anyone had anticipated. The manager, who had been quietly observing, nodded in approval, clearly impressed by Emily's composure and skill. Even the colleagues who had doubted her the most began to show signs of respect. There were subtle glances, quiet acknowledgments, and small comments recognizing her contribution. For the first time, Emily felt that she had truly begun to break through the barriers of skepticism that had surrounded her since day one. As the day progressed, Emily continued to handle her responsibilities with precision and care. She completed her tasks ahead of schedule, double-checking every detail to ensure nothing was overlooked. Her quiet confidence and consistent performance began to influence the team. Some colleagues, who had previously ignored her suggestions, now asked for her opinion or guidance. The laughter and whispers hadn't disappeared completely, but Emily noticed that they were losing their power over the group dynamic. During a short break, Sarah, one of the more skeptical colleagues, approached Emily with a tentative smile. She admitted that she hadn't expected Emily to handle the project so well and asked if Emily could help explain some parts of the workflow to others. Emily agreed, but she did it in a way that empowered Sarah rather than highlighting her own abilities. By helping without showing off, Emily gained trust and quietly strengthened her position within the team. By the end of the day, the team had made significant progress on the project, largely due to Emily's careful planning, calm leadership in problem-solving, and ability to see solutions that others had missed. Her colleagues began to recognize that her skills were real and valuable, though most were still cautious about admitting it openly. Emily, however, was not seeking immediate praise. She understood that true recognition often came over time, built on consistent performance and quiet competence. As Emily packed her bag to leave, she reflected on the day. The challenge had been far greater than anything she had faced on her previous days, but it had also been an opportunity to prove her capabilities under pressure. She realized that being underestimated was no longer a disadvantage, it was an advantage. Her colleagues' assumptions about her abilities allowed her to approach problems calmly while they reacted emotionally or dismissed important details. Walking out of the building into the cool evening air, Emily felt a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. The fourth day had shown her that skill, patience, and careful observation could turn doubt into respect. She knew the road ahead would continue to be challenging, but she was ready. One day, when the right moment arrived, the same people who had laughed at her skills would finally realize just who Emily Carter truly was. And when that day came, the shock and admiration would be undeniable. By the fifth day, Emily Carter's presence in the office had begun to quietly shift the atmosphere. The laughter and whispers that had followed her since day one hadn't completely disappeared, but they had become less frequent, replaced by cautious curiosity from some of her colleagues. Emily noticed subtle changes. A pause when she entered a room, colleagues glancing her way before starting a task, and tentative questions about her methods. She understood that suspicion and curiosity were natural reactions when someone's abilities exceeded expectations, and she decided to let it develop naturally. The morning started with a meeting to review progress on the critical project that had consumed the team for the past few days. Emily walked in prepared, her notes organized, and her mind clear. She noticed that some colleagues were already whispering about how well she had handled her tasks yesterday. A few even seemed hesitant to challenge her suggestions, unsure whether they could dismiss them without revealing their own ignorance. Emily smiled faintly to herself, recognizing that the seeds of respect were beginning to grow, even if most of them didn't admit it openly. During the meeting, a complex problem arose, one that had stumped the team the previous day. The room grew tense as different voices clashed, each person trying to impose their own solution. Emily listened carefully, analyzing each suggestion with calm attention. She realized that the problem was simpler than it seemed and that a combination of small adjustments could resolve it efficiently. She considered speaking immediately, but instead, she waited, letting others exhaust themselves debating and second-guessing. When she finally spoke, Emily's explanation was clear, confident, and precise. She outlined her approach step by step, showing how it would solve the problem and improve the overall project. This time, however, she noticed something new. Instead of rolling their eyes or whispering behind her back, her colleagues listened intently. Jason, who had mocked her from the beginning, raised his eyebrows in surprise, a rare sign of genuine curiosity. Even Sarah, who had begun to see Emily's potential, leaned forward to understand the logic behind her suggestions. Emily's calm authority and thorough reasoning were impossible to ignore. As the day progressed, subtle rumors began circulating about Emily's background. A few colleagues whispered that she must have experience far beyond what anyone had expected from a newcomer. Some speculated that she had worked on high-profile projects before joining this team, while others suggested she might have specialized training no one knew about. Emily didn't confirm or deny any of these guesses. Instead, she continued to perform her tasks with quiet efficiency, letting the mystery surrounding her grow. She understood that people often respect someone more when they are unsure of their full capabilities. At one point in the afternoon, the manager called her aside to review her progress and insights on the project. He asked her detailed questions about her methods, clearly impressed with how she had approached challenges that had confounded others. Emily answered patiently and thoroughly, demonstrating her knowledge without arrogance. The manager's approving nod and subtle words of praise were a reminder that her skills were finally being recognized by those in positions of authority, even if some colleagues remained skeptical. Emily also began to notice changes in her interactions with other team members. Some who had been openly dismissive or mocking began to approach her cautiously, asking questions about her methods or seeking advice. Their tone had shifted from sarcasm to genuine curiosity, and Emily welcomed these opportunities to guide them subtly. She explained concepts clearly without showing off, building trust and credibility in a way that slowly earned their respect. By mid-afternoon, a particularly challenging problem arose in the project, one that required creative thinking under pressure. A few team members were struggling to find a solution, voices rising in frustration. Emily observed the situation calmly, analyzing the issue from every angle. When she spoke up, she offered a solution that no one had considered, a method that combined logic, efficiency, and insight from previous experiences. Her colleagues paused, unsure how to respond at first. Then slowly they realized the brilliance of her approach. Jason, visibly surprised, muttered under his breath, "I didn't think she could do this." This day marked a turning point. Emily's quiet competence and consistent excellence had begun to shift the team's perception of her. People were starting to suspect that she was not just skilled but had a significant background no one knew about. They had begun asking themselves, "Who is this person really? How does she know so much?" Emily understood that revealing too much too soon would spoil the impact of her eventual disclosure, so she continued to maintain her calm, mysterious presence. As the day drew to a close, Emily reflected on the progress she had made, not just in completing tasks, but in changing the way her colleagues viewed her. She realized that suspicion and curiosity could be powerful tools if handled wisely. By remaining humble, patient, and focused, she had allowed people to discover her skill naturally, without forcing recognition or praise. The mystery surrounding her background added an element of intrigue that heightened their awareness of her talents. Packing her bag, Emily felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had faced challenges, skeptics, and whispers, yet she had emerged stronger, more confident, and more respected than she had been the previous day. The team was beginning to recognize that she was more than a rookie, and her subtle hints of knowledge and skill were planting seeds of admiration that would grow in the coming days. Walking out of the office into the cool evening air, Emily felt the familiar thrill of anticipation. She knew that the moment when her true identity would be revealed was approaching. For now, she would continue to let her colleagues underestimate her, letting their curiosity build naturally. And when the right moment came, the shock of her true abilities would leave them speechless, finally showing everyone just who Emily Carter really was. The 6th day at the office began like any other, but Emily Carter could feel that something was different. Her colleagues' curiosity about her abilities had grown over the past few days, and subtle glances and whispered speculations had become more frequent. There was a quiet tension in the air, as if everyone sensed that she was holding back something extraordinary. Emily had been waiting for the right moment to reveal the full extent of her skills, and today the moment had arrived. The team was tasked with a major presentation for an important client, one that could determine the future of their project and, potentially, their reputations. The atmosphere in the office was tense. Every team member felt the pressure. The manager assigned roles based on perceived strengths, but some of the critical tasks were initially left to Emily only because no one expected a newcomer to handle them successfully. Jason and a few others exchanged skeptical looks, whispering doubts under their breath about whether Emily could manage the responsibilities. Emily, however, remained calm, quietly confident that this challenge was her opportunity. As the day progressed, the team encountered a series of unexpected problems. Technical glitches, conflicting data, and tight deadlines created a chaotic environment. While others panicked or argued over minor details, Emily worked steadily, analyzing each problem and anticipating the next potential challenge. She noticed errors that no one else had identified, small details that could have jeopardized the entire project. She corrected them efficiently, all the while maintaining a calm presence that contrasted sharply with the rising tension among her colleagues. When it was time for the client presentation, the office was buzzing with nerves. Emily had been assigned a key section of the report that included both complex data analysis and strategic recommendations. She had prepared meticulously, not just presenting the information but also weaving in insights and solutions based on her previous experiences, insights that were beyond the understanding of most of her coworkers. As she began to speak, her confidence and clarity immediately caught the attention of everyone in the room. Even those who had doubted her skills were forced to listen carefully. As she progressed through her presentation, Emily noticed the changing expressions of her colleagues. Jason's smirk had vanished, replaced by surprise and something like admiration. Sarah and others leaned forward, their eyes wide, as they realized the depth of Emily's knowledge. She explained not only the data but the strategy behind it, highlighting risks, opportunities, and solutions in a way that demonstrated both experience and insight. Her calm authority and the precision of her analysis left no room for doubt. She was no ordinary newcomer. Midway through the presentation, Emily paused and subtly hinted at her background. A small, well-timed reference to a previous project she had worked on, combined with her ability to handle complex questions effortlessly, sparked curiosity and disbelief among the team. Whispers spread quietly across the room as people exchanged looks, beginning to connect the dots. "Wait, she did that before?" someone muttered. "I think she's more than a rookie," another said under their breath. Emily didn't need to speak further. Her actions, her confidence, and the accuracy of her insights were already doing the talking. By the end of the presentation, the full impact of her skills became undeniable. The manager and the client were both impressed, praising her thoroughness, strategic thinking, and composure under pressure. Even the most skeptical team members could no longer hide their astonishment. They had all underestimated Emily, assuming she was inexperienced and unprepared, but the reality could not have been more different. Her colleagues' respect shifted from hesitant to genuine in the span of a few hours. Later, during a private discussion with the manager, Emily's past achievements and true identity were revealed. She had been part of elite programs in her previous roles, gaining experience in high-pressure situations that no one in the office could have imagined. She had led successful projects in challenging environments, worked with top-tier teams, and earned accolades for her expertise. The manager's eyes widened as he realized just how much talent had been quietly working alongside the team all week. This revelation, though private at first, would soon ripple through the office as word spread. When her colleagues finally learned the truth, the reactions were immediate and dramatic. Jason, who had mocked her from the beginning, stared in disbelief, realizing that he had misjudged her completely. Sarah and others expressed admiration, some even apologizing for underestimating her. The whispers of doubt were replaced by conversations of amazement and respect. Emily's calm, quiet demeanor had concealed her extraordinary capabilities, but the truth was now undeniable. By the end of the day, the office atmosphere had changed completely. Emily, once underestimated and mocked, had become the center of admiration. Her colleagues now saw her not as a rookie but as a skilled, experienced professional whose abilities exceeded anyone's expectations. The revelation of her true identity had transformed the dynamics of the team, earning her respect and trust that had previously seemed impossible. As Emily packed her bag to leave, she felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond professional success. She had faced skepticism, ridicule, and doubt, yet she had remained patient, focused, and composed. Her strategy of letting her actions speak for themselves had worked perfectly, culminating in a moment that would be remembered by everyone in the office. She knew that this day marked a turning point, not just for her career, but for the way her colleagues would perceive talent and skill in the future. Walking out into the evening air, Emily felt a quiet sense of triumph. She had shown everyone who she really was, not through boastful words but through competence, intelligence, and calm determination. Her journey from being underestimated to being recognized for her true abilities was complete, and she knew that the respect she had earned would shape her path forward in profound ways. The shock she had caused was not just about skill. It was about the lesson everyone had learned. Never judge someone based on first impressions, because true talent often hides in plain sight. After the revelation of her true identity, Emily Carter entered the office the next day with a sense of quiet confidence. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The skeptical whispers and mocking laughter that had followed her in the early days had been replaced by curious glances, cautious respect, and even admiration. Her colleagues, who had once doubted her, now looked at her in a completely different light. For Emily, this was not the moment to celebrate. It was the moment to continue proving herself and solidify the respect she had begun to earn. The morning began with a team meeting, where the manager acknowledged Emily's contributions and publicly praised her insight and expertise. This recognition sent a wave through the team. Colleagues who had previously ignored her now paid close attention to every word she said. Even Jason, who had mocked her relentlessly at first, listened intently, his usual smirk replaced with a look of surprise and tentative respect. Emily remained composed, speaking confidently but without arrogance, understanding that true leadership was shown through actions, not words. As the day progressed, Emily began taking on a larger role within the project. The manager entrusted her with coordinating critical tasks, assigning her responsibilities that were once considered too complex for a newcomer. Emily approached each task methodically, demonstrating not only her skill but also her ability to lead and guide others. She explained strategies clearly, broke down complex problems into manageable steps, and ensured that each team member understood their role. Her calm and logical approach began to inspire confidence in her colleagues. One by one, the team members who had doubted her started seeking her guidance. Sarah, who had initially been skeptical, approached Emily to ask for advice on a particularly tricky part of the project. Emily didn't hesitate. She explained everything patiently, ensuring that Sarah felt empowered to complete the task herself. This approach of teaching rather than simply doing the work herself earned Emily even more respect. Her colleagues realized that she was not only highly skilled but also genuinely invested in the success of the team. Throughout the day, Emily's influence continued to grow. She spotted small errors in the project that others had overlooked and corrected them quietly but effectively. She suggested improvements to workflow that increased efficiency and minimized mistakes. Every time she offered guidance or insight, her colleagues could see the depth of her experience and the precision of her judgment. Even those who had once dismissed her abilities could no longer deny the truth. Emily was extraordinary. By afternoon, Emily had fully transitioned from being an underestimated newcomer to a central figure in the team. The manager assigned her to lead a high-pressure task that involved coordinating multiple team members under a tight deadline. In the past, such a responsibility would have caused tension or anxiety, but Emily approached it with calm authority. She assigned tasks, anticipated problems, and ensured that everyone knew exactly what to do. Her ability to remain composed while managing complexity impressed not only the team but also the leadership observing her performance. The team faced a significant challenge mid-afternoon. A last-minute complication threatened to derail their progress, and panic began to spread among her colleagues. Emily immediately stepped in, calmly assessing the situation and formulating a solution. She communicated her plan clearly, directing each member on how to contribute effectively. While others had previously relied on luck or improvisation, Emily relied on knowledge, experience, and strategic thinking. Her calmness under pressure inspired the team, and together they resolved the problem efficiently. By the end of the day, the project had progressed further than anyone had expected. Emily's influence had transformed the team's dynamics. Colleagues who had once been dismissive were now actively seeking her input and following her lead. Jason, who had doubted her from the beginning, admitted quietly that he had underestimated her abilities. Even those who had been neutral or mildly skeptical began to treat her with genuine respect. Emily's consistent performance, patience, and willingness to guide others had earned her a central place in the team. In addition to professional recognition, Emily began to build strong relationships with her colleagues. By sharing knowledge and offering support without seeking attention, she created an environment of trust and collaboration. Team members felt comfortable approaching her with questions and challenges, knowing she would respond thoughtfully and constructively. Emily's influence extended beyond just completing tasks. She was shaping the team's culture, turning skepticism and competition into cooperation and mutual respect. As the day came to a close, Emily reflected on her journey. She had faced ridicule, doubt, and underestimation, yet she had remained patient and focused. Her perseverance had transformed not only how her colleagues saw her, but also how she saw herself. She realized that true recognition and respect are earned over time, through consistent effort, integrity, and skill. Emily had shown that leadership was not about demanding attention or asserting dominance. It was about demonstrating competence, inspiring confidence, and empowering others to succeed alongside you. Walking out of the office that evening, Emily felt a sense of fulfillment. She had not only proven her abilities, but had also helped her team recognize their own potential. Her journey from being laughed at to becoming a respected leader was complete. Yet she knew this was just the beginning. The respect she had earned would open doors for greater challenges and opportunities, and she felt ready to face them. More importantly, she had left an enduring impression on her colleagues. A lesson that true skill and leadership often reveal themselves quietly, but when recognized, can inspire and transform those around you. After weeks of proving herself and quietly building respect, Emily Carter reached a point where she could finally reflect on her journey. The office, which had once been full of whispers, laughter, and subtle mockery, had transformed into a place of recognition, collaboration, and admiration. Emily walked through the familiar hallways with a sense of calm pride. She knew that the journey from being underestimated to being fully respected had not been easy, but every challenge had taught her something valuable about patience, perseverance, and the power of quiet confidence. The morning began like any other, but it carried a different energy. Colleagues approached Emily with genuine interest and respect, seeking her input on projects, asking for guidance, and even acknowledging the ideas she had shared days earlier that had once been dismissed. Jason, who had spent the first days mocking her, now openly sought her advice, his tone respectful rather than sarcastic. Sarah and others had become collaborators and allies, appreciating Emily's patience and her ability to help them grow while achieving the team's goals. The transformation was tangible, and Emily knew that it was the result of consistent effort, intelligence, and composure under pressure. The manager called a team meeting to review the project's progress, and Emily was asked to present the final strategy and results. This was a moment of acknowledgement and recognition, and Emily delivered her presentation with the same calm authority that had impressed everyone before. She explained the outcomes, the improvements she had suggested, and the ways in which the team had excelled together. Her presentation was not just about showcasing her skills, but also about highlighting the collaborative efforts of the team. The manager and the colleagues listened attentively, nodding in agreement, visibly impressed by the clarity and precision of her analysis. What stood out most to her colleagues was not just Emily's skill, but the way she handled herself throughout the entire process. She had faced ridicule and doubt at every step, yet she had never allowed negativity to distract her from her goals. Her approach was measured, confident, and humble, qualities that many in the office admired. She had shown that true talent doesn't need to boast. It speaks through results and action. The respect she had earned was not just for her professional abilities, but also for her character, her composure under pressure, and her ability to inspire others. As the day progressed, Emily noticed subtle changes in how the team functioned. Where arguments and doubts had once slowed progress, collaboration and trust now guided decision-making. Team members listened to each other more carefully, valued different perspectives, and approached challenges with a sense of unity. Emily had not only proven herself but had also influenced the culture of the team, showing them that respect is earned through competence, integrity, and patience. The impact of her presence was becoming evident not just in completed projects but in the way the team approached work together. Mid-afternoon, Emily was approached by the manager for a private conversation. He expressed admiration for how she had handled the past days, recognizing her not only as a skilled professional but also as a natural leader. The manager mentioned that her approach had inspired other team members to improve their performance, creating a positive ripple effect throughout the department. Emily listened humbly, acknowledging his praise while reflecting silently on how far she had come. It was a moment of validation, a confirmation that her strategy of letting her skills speak for themselves had worked perfectly. Later, Emily spent time mentoring some of the newer team members. She patiently guided them, sharing knowledge without ever appearing condescending. She emphasized the importance of observation, patience, and calm problem-solving. Many of the newcomers looked at her with awe, inspired not only by her expertise, but also by the journey she had taken to earn her place. Emily realized that her story could serve as a lesson to others. Success is rarely immediate, respect is earned over time, and perseverance in the face of doubt can transform not only an individual but also an entire team. By the end of the day, Emily had finished her work and walked to her desk one last time before leaving. She reflected on the journey that had begun with whispers, doubts, and laughter. Every small challenge, every moment of skepticism from her colleagues, had been a stepping stone toward this point. She had remained focused, strategic, and composed, letting her abilities speak louder than words. The office that had once underestimated her now recognized her as a professional of extraordinary skill, a capable leader, and a person whose presence elevated everyone around her. As Emily stepped out of the office into the evening air, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She understood that the most important victories were not just professional achievements but the respect and trust she had earned, and the positive change she had inspired in those around her. Her journey had become a story of resilience, patience, and quiet determination. A story that would be remembered by her colleagues and inspire newcomers for years to come. In that moment, Emily realized the deeper lesson of her experience. Never judge someone by appearances or first impressions. True talent, perseverance, and inner strength often remain hidden until the right moment reveals them. Those who had once doubted her had learned this lesson firsthand, and the impact would stay with them. Emily had not only proven herself but had also changed the way her colleagues saw potential, skill, and the meaning of respect. She smiled, feeling satisfied, knowing that her journey was complete, yet the legacy she had created would continue to inspire. Walking away from the building, Emily Carter felt the quiet pride of someone who had faced doubt, worked tirelessly, and ultimately transformed both herself and the people around her. She had become a symbol of what perseverance, patience, and skill could achieve. A reminder that true greatness often speaks softly at first, but leaves a lasting impact on everyone who witnesses it.